Hi, I'm Susan Kennard and welcome to The Spiritual Awakener. This is a podcast where I get to talk to and interview really incredible people who have either had a turning point in their life or a spiritual awakening, and that has changed them. That has made them realize they were so much more than who they thought they were. And they now help you, the collective, to heal yourself or create an amazing life. So I'm really pleased, really excited this evening to be interviewing and talking to my guest, Michele. And Michele, I want you to say your surname because I want you to get it. I don't want to get it wrong. You get it right.
So it's Michele PW, or you can just say Michele PW. So that works too.
Okay, PW. I like that. Yes. Michele PW. So Michele and we actually connected at the New Media Summit, which is a media summit for podcasts. So it's great that she's here finally on my podcast. And I believe she is actually creating one herself, which she'll tell us about a bit later. But Michele, thank you for being here. And if you knew of a turning point or a spiritual awakening point in your life, what would it be?
So it was 2012.
2012. Wow.
I actually have a date and time. Yeah. 2012. So what happened was the year going up to it was the fall of 2012, and the year that year was a really difficult year. Just a lot of personal challenges, and it accumulated with my mother being diagnosed with cancer, and so it was. And I think part of the reason why it happened is because before then I had been resisting a lot, because I had a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry, and this was my entire life. And so that was already a problem. Like I already really wasn't able to manage my emotions as well as I could have. And so I was already, I was pushing things down and letting things build up.
Yeah.
And that year with the additional,
a lot of people do, Michele, a lot of people do that. Yeah.
And that year had so many other challenges that the load just got too much, and it just piled on. And one night it was like it just snapped, I guess is the easiest way to do it. I just started crying. I couldn't stop crying. I was just distraught. I had nightmares for 2 weeks. I was so, because after I stopped crying, I could not. I was like I was knocked down on the mat, and I couldn't get up. So finally, in the middle of this whole thing of just really suffering, one of my personal development, I had been in the, I have a copywriting company, a copywriting marketing company.
Yeah.
And my clients are mostly in the personal development, transformation coaches, that kind of, and so I've been around a lot of that.
Connected at some,
yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of that sayings were kind of, I was kind of in there, but then one of them finally poked its head through, and I still remember this in the middle of this whole thing, which was life is not, it's 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it. And I thought, and how I was responding to this was just awful. So that was like, I'm like, all right, I got to change things. So I got a hold of my friend Christina Ryo, who is a spiritual healer, and I basically got on the phone with her and said, I really need your help. And she did. So she put me, so she started working with me, and that was what finally got me, kind of busted through and sort of put me on this path. So yes.
So Michele, what do you think was, what do you think it was that led you? It's almost like a pinnacle, isn't it? And as I look at it, I kind of looked at it as you were talking, because obviously, I'm clairvoyant and I'm a medium and a spiritual healer. So I was looking at an iceberg. So I was looking at the tip of the iceberg being where, perhaps we show the world, like that's who we are. And then underneath is really what's going on for us. Did you feel that it was almost like something that had to come out, almost like that iceberg had to kind of,
it had to,
to show itself?
Yes,
Mm.
because that was exactly what it was. Because I had spent, one of the things that Christine had me do was go through the Enneagram book, because I never even heard of an Enneagram, and I'm an Enneagram
Yeah.
6.
Yeah.
So and that's important, because Enneagram 6 is all about, if you're familiar with the Enneagrams, it's all about fear and worry,
I know about it,
anxiety.
but I couldn't tell you too much about
Couldn't tell
it,
what it
but
said.
I do know.
Yeah, so that one is that, because
Mm.
each type has got its own,
It's got its
8
own
is,
time. Mm-hmm.
yeah, 8 is about rage. They correspond with 7 deadly sins +2. I'm in the +2 with the fear. So everybody's got their passion, which is the not passion like passion, we've got a passion for something, but like the Christ passion, which is
Yeah.
kind of our fatal flaw. So anyway, so part of what the 6 is, the 6 doesn't listen to the inner voice, because we can't really hear the inner voice, because there's so much, so much fear and anxiety, and we look towards outside sources. So that was what was, so some of that was what was, it was like me, I'd ignored that little voice for so long, and it was getting louder, but I was still ignoring it, and I'll still focus outward. I'll still focus outward. And so it really was that way. So it was like the inner voice sort of like went, boom, and
It was
then
almost
just broke
like
everything.
it was almost like you had to listen, right? Because
Yes.
if it gets to that place, and if anyone's listening to this and they're in that place, because obviously there's a, if you're listening to this on video and you're watching this recording, you will have got it right at the time when people are really experiencing this having to go within. And what I feel Michelle's talking about is like, oh my God, like if I didn't listen to that, then I probably would have exploded. And I think a lot of people feel like that. But if you're listening to this later on iTunes or Stitcher or another podcast platform, then it might be that this situation is over now in the world, or it might have changed, but you still might be feeling this feeling that there's something within you, almost like a pressure cooker, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
That was exactly it. Yeah. Yeah, that's really what it felt like, was a pressure cooker. In fact, that whole year felt like it was a pressure cooker, and I didn't really know what to do. So that was, and I think that's what had finally happened. Well, I mean, quite honestly, I was getting the signs. I mean, this is not to say that I didn't know what to do, even though it's hard, it's difficult for me to hear my inner voice. I've gotten a lot better at it, but it was very difficult. Yeah. I mean, it was because it was so clouded over by the worry and the anxiety. That still didn't mean I didn't hear it. It just meant that I was ignoring it, because because that's the thing too. If you don't want to do what your inner voice is telling you to do, you can claim you don't hear it when that's not really true. It's just you don't want to do it.
And also it's stepping into something sometimes.
Yes.
I've been a therapist for over like nearly 30 years, and it's stepping into it. It's taking responsibility for wanting to change something, isn't it, in your life? And if you're obviously ready, but sometimes there's a resistance to that, because it's a really interesting journey to go on, and it can bring up things that you don't want to look at underneath that iceberg, right?
Exactly.
So carry on.
Yes. And that was it. And a lot of it was and that's the thing. And what I really needed to do was start feeling my emotions, because I really believe, especially after going through this whole thing, and if you have a problem with worry, worry is, and it's interesting because you wouldn't think it that way, but I do think worry, the whole concept of worrying, is distracting us from feeling our fear. Because think about it. I mean, what is worry but like a future, like we're almost like we're, something happens, and we want to, we feel like if we plan, like if we figure out the worst case scenario and then figure out a plan around it, that's going to make it better. Well, it doesn't make it better. So we're using that planning isn't planning, it's just worry. So if you just stop the voice, stop that noise in your head, and just feel the feelings, everything will start to shift. So, and it's not easy. I'll say the first time you decide to really just feel that fear, you like, at least for me, I felt like I was going to die, because, I mean, it's like my chest was constructed. It was so hard to force air through it. And so that's what I really focused on, was just pushing air up through my
breathing,
chest.
taking the breath of life in, right?
Yeah, because I was, everything gets so constricted, and you do. And the thing is that, and I guess that's part of it, when you think about fear, that's where what fear is trying to do, is trying to save your life. So if you really go into that pure fear, even if you are completely safe, you're in a you're in a safe, secure home, there's food or building. It doesn't have to be, like you're inside, you're in shelter, you've got, you're comfortable, you've got food in the fridge. So, your needs are met. But so there's no reason to feel it, but you still feel that fear, and that fear, because that fear is tied to dying. So, so it does actually feel like even though there's no reason to, but then that's the thing.
But in a way you are dying, but you're dying in the sense of you're dying in the old you, and you're coming into being reborn, really, if we want to be, really.
It is, It is. And so it was breathing, it was forcing through that, and it gets easier. So I will say, the first time you do it, you're going to be convinced you're doing it wrong, because I was convinced I was doing it wrong. I was like, there's no way it could feel this bad. Anything feel this bad could be good for you.
About.
Yeah, breathing and just feeling the emotion.
And feeling the emotion. Yeah, it makes sense.
And then, but once you get comfortable with it, because the thing is on the other side of that is peace. And I didn't realize that. So when you go through it, and I think if you are worried, what you really long for is peace, and you think you're going to get peace because whatever it is, you're going to resolve whatever it is you're worried about. But that's not true. Where you get peace is feeling the emotion. If you go into the fear, that's where the peace is. And
that just for a moment, let's just hear that, really, because if you are listening to this and you are feeling anxious and you are feeling afraid, I always find that with addiction as well. If people are experiencing addiction, actually really what they want is peace. So this is a really key thing, is that you have to kind of acknowledge those emotions and feel them, and not just bat them away. And I think what we tend to do is we're scared of feeling emotion. I definitely know that on my journey that I have been there. So I definitely get it. But once you really embrace that and you start to feel it, so there is a way out, isn't there, Michele?
Yes. Yeah, because it gets better. And the thing is once you've experienced that, it's going to be easier. It's going to be easier to go to the next level. It's going to be easier to keep doing it, because on the other side of it is peace. And it will, and every time you do it, you get a little better at managing your you get more peace, and you get a little better at managing your emotion, and being able to, and not letting what happens in the world knock you down.
Amazing. And do you feel that some of that came from early days? Do you feel that, because that often seems to be the case with people, is that experiences that they'd had, they'd made a decision that was scary in the world, and there wasn't anybody that could help them with that in that moment, and so they had to kind of restrict it. Do you feel that was kind of you?
It must have been. So the thing is that I grew up in a very normal middle-class family. There was nothing, my parents both were very loving. There's no divorce. There's nothing that,
you can pinpoint.
There's no outward event or trauma. I can say that, this is what happened. It was just, I don't know what it was. So that's the thing. That's one of the things that's always kind of, I do have to say that it has troubled me, because I feel like, and that's the thing, that's another thing too, I just let go. It's like, just because just because this is,
because you can't pinpoint it, right? I mean, I believe that, we've brought stuff in, it's ancestral, sometimes it's epigenetic, it's not necessarily something that you had to experience in trauma in this life. Sometimes it is, and quite a lot it is, but you can have brought it in ancestrally, and in that genetics line. And if you believe in past lives, you may have brought it in from past lives as well. So it can be from anywhere.
And it also could be, the other thing too, I do think is, I do feel like I'm sensitive emotionally. And so for other people who are that way, and it may have been just picking up the emotional stuff from your parents that you're not even aware of, but they're dealing with their trauma, and they and they pass it to you
You
unconsciously, of course.
absorb it.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
absorb it through osmosis. Like,
Yeah,
and if you are sensitive, some people call that an empath, don't they? But
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
And I
it
think
could be
I've
that
got
that's what it
pieces.
was.
I think I've got. I my dad's a scientist, so I'm reluctant to go there, but I do feel like I might be some of that when
Yeah,
I hear
well, I'm a spiritual
descriptions.
scientist, and so for me, evidence is like key. But sometimes
Yes.
I have to let it go. Sometimes I have to, like you, I have to just say, well, actually, that we doesn't matter. Like, actually,
Right.
you just have to trust in that process. And obviously,
Yes.
working with my guides, I had to trust in the process, right? So you have
Yeah.
to trust in the process of your healing, and that's what you did. So where did you go after that? After you trusted in the process of feeling your emotions and moved on and started to feel that peace, I'm sure your world opened up, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So it took a little time. This is not a quick
Quick fix.
fix, but on the other hand, you didn't get here quickly either.
No. Exactly.
If you're really going to be honest, this was years in the making. So what ended up happening was, I built a very successful copywriting and marketing company, which I still have today. But
It's
one of
called
the things,
Love
Love-Based Copy, yes, yes. Oh,
Yeah.
Love-Based Biz, yes. So you can
Yeah,
see that. That's
lovebasedbiz.com.
and
Yeah.
one of the things that, but one of the things that I had denied while building it was my fiction side. So I actually taught myself to read when I was 3 years old because I wanted to write stories so badly. So but I pushed that part aside to focus
Yeah.
on building this company.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that came out in this whole thing was because I was ignoring that little fiction voice. That was
The
part. I mean, there's a lot of
creativity,
things.
like
The
the
creativity,
creativity
yeah.
bit.
I mean, there's a lot of things that was going on. That was a big piece of it. There's other things too that was happening.
Yeah.
But so one of the things that I've done is now I've got, my 5 nonfiction books out, which are all in the Love-Based Business series. And then I also have 5 fiction books out.
Yeah.
And I'm just really honoring both the creative and the nonfiction, and all of that as well, on top of the other stuff.
Can people find those on your lovebasedbiz.com?
Yeah. So it is there. They're on Amazon. All the nonfiction and the fiction are all on Amazon, and then you also Love-Based Publishing. But if you go there or michelepw.com, you will see I've got that is one problem with building, like having business series and fiction series. I end up having a lot of URLs, but if you go here, you can find the fiction, and there are links to the other sites that have the fiction and the nonfiction.
So some people might say, oh my goodness, that's a huge amount of books that you've written. And before we went live, really, essentially, I was telling you that I recently channeled mine, and it was done before March, and March 2020, and it's not a mean, it's a mean feat doing that. Like, it's like you really have to set aside that time, don't you, to really just, I call it channeling, and it's birthing a book, really. In the words of Tom Bird, who might have heard of him, he talks about birthing a book, like that book's inside of you. So what can you do for people? Like, how can you help people in your business? What do you do?
So I one of the things that I've stepped into as well, along with my fiction and nonfiction, is really helping entrepreneurs with their books. So part of it is because the copywriting, the marketing is still going. But one of the things that I realized with the nonfiction book is that it's really one of the best marketing tools that we can have, and it can help you build your business. It can actually build your subscriber list. It can, your prospect list. It can build your clients, because people read your book and then they want to hire you. So and I really do love marketing. So one of the things is that it's the part of where I'm going with is not only just helping people shape their books, but then how to market their books after the initial launch. And I can certainly help you with the launch as well, but so often at least in the nonfiction world, there's a lot of emphasis on launch and almost no emphasis on what happens after the launch, which means a lot of books just kind of die on Amazon. So
which is a shame, isn't it?
It is a shame.
So because that's people's story, and quite often, obviously a bit of my story is in my book, not a massive amount. It's mostly channeling, healing, channeling from source, but it is a bit of my story. And I think, and we found this, didn't we, anyway, at the New Media Summit, that the majority of people will talk about their story, and the story makes you real, doesn't it?
It does.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
And people put all their life force, they put all this
Yeah.
energy and time and money and life force
Yeah.
into a book, and then it doesn't go anywhere. And I just think
Yeah.
I just think that's so terrible. So one of the things that had happened, so with the fiction and nonfiction, so I published the nonfiction books first, and then and then and then I published the fiction, and then I went to my marketing friends and I said, so how do you promote a fiction book? And nobody knew. So I went on a quest in the fiction world and got marketing help there.
I went on a quest.
Yes, I did. And I found ways to market a fiction book. And you see, that was the beauty, because in the fiction world, there's no upsell. So the nonfiction world, if you write a book, and then, there's going to be like a course or working one-on-one with you. There's a back end you can make money. There is no back end for fiction other than another book. So there is this emphasis on how do you cheaply and effectively promote your books. So I was able to take what I learned there and apply it to the nonfiction world, because again, there is no emphasis except for after the launch for the nonfiction book. So that's really so it was great. I feel like with this whole, the fiction and the nonfiction, it was able to just be really uniquely to be able to bring this information.
And so if people are sort of, thinking about, when they hear the words birthing a book, or when they hear what we're talking about, which is really that story that you might have within you, or if you've had a story that you've been thinking about, maybe that you want to write through. So often I find fiction is somebody's weaving a story, and when we look at Harry Potter or something like that, like there's a story there, but I'm sure that some of that was what that person felt as they were creating it, right? So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh my God, like I'm stuck in, I've been getting all these ideas about a book, could they contact you and say, look, do they need to have the book written, the manuscript?
No. We can yes, they can definitely reach out and talk. I can help with the coaching piece too. Yes. And then I'm also the podcast that we brought up too. It's not quite launched yet, but it's the Write Inspiration podcast. And the idea of that is to share inspiration on how to write. And
oh my God, I so needed Michele 6 months ago, and obviously I didn't know her then, but I so needed her then, because as much as we do what we do, in the sense of, you might be an expert in your field and you're listening to this, but actually we need experts in their field to help us as well, because we can't have every hat on. And I think that's really important to listen to, is that's why, I have someone helping me, but it's almost like accountability. Would you say, Michele? It's like accountability.
Yes, and just having somebody, I think, help shape the book, help see where the weaknesses are. We all need that, and then of course, helping the birth it and get it out there, so that it's not just sitting there gathering virtual dust, which is just
within you as well. That virtual, I love the virtual dust.
Yes.
Because my guys talk about dust in your energy field and how everything's just dust. So if you imagine you've got this book inside of you, if you're listening to this and you've got this book inside of you, that's just gathering dust, right?
It is gathering dust, yes. And it's, I think the thing that finally did was in 2017, was it 2017? My mom so my mom got diagnosed in 2012, and then or no, it was 2015. See, that's like she died, and the thing is, but before that, I remember sitting there in ICU with her, holding her hand. We thought she was going to die. It was one of the times, if you've ever had a loved one with the dying can sometimes take a while, and so we're in ICU, and I'm holding her hand. I'm saying, I'm not going to die with my book inside me, and that was really what the catalyst was. So I share that because I do think that's really important, because you're right. Your idea is, if you don't want to, at the end of this wonderful life, to realize that you have that dust still inside you and you didn't get it out in the world.
And I think definitely, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud here for you guys listening, because I had mine in myself for over 2 years, probably a lifetime or more than a lifetime, but for over 2 years. And when I read back at the initial bits that I wrote, it was to, the date that I wrote it, and I started writing it. So this happens as well, that people start to write it and then they get distracted and stuff like that. But I feel that never goes away. And I think that now is a really good time for people to really express who they are in the world, and how amazing to be able to voice it through the words of the written form,
Exactly.
And I just feel really strongly and passionately, like you do, that people really need to speak about who they are authentically. And that might be through fiction, and that's great. Or it might be through nonfiction, where somebody stands, like we do at the New Media Summit, and rawly stand there in our vulnerability and speak about who we are, right? In a few minutes. And you can do that with your book.
You absolutely can.
It's really heartfelt to think about it that way. I think it's really important for people. And if you're listening to this and you feel that you've had this idea, or just it's sowing a seed for you, or there's a little light that's coming on, how can they get hold of you? Can you have sort of like a consultation before you? So tell us about that, Michele.
So just reach out. So again, if you go to one of my websites, and you can get to the contact information.
What's the best one? The one that's
so if you are looking for the publishing in the book, the lovebasedpublishing.com is probably the best one, and there'll be an author services there. So just you can click there and read about that, and then there's a form there, or you can there's also contact. You can just send an email if you don't like website forms. So whatever, and then if just send an email, that'll go to my assistant, and and then we can certainly get on the phone and talk
and connect. And I'm in the UK. You're obviously not in the UK. Does that in the sense of, I work all over the world, but do you work all over the world? Do you work with people all over the world? So it doesn't matter where you are, whether you're listening in the UK or whether you're listening all over the world. Whereabouts are you actually based?
I'm in Arizona. So yes, and I have worked with clients all over the world. And I've also done a lot with like Amazon in the UK and in Canada too. Yes, I'm very familiar with that as well.
Oh, so that's absolutely brilliant. So what would you say would be the key thing for people to take away from this? Because you have a beautiful story that you've told. And I'm sorry about your mother, but I'm sure she's very much part of this experience that you're having now, which is really speaking about who you are out in the world. So what would you say to people listening now?
And I really want you to not wait. I do feel like my mother got sick, and then my mother died, and then that was the catalyst to really just finally getting my act together. And and so probably my biggest regret is my mother wasn't able to see it. She was a huge champion of me, by the way. So there was none of that. And then, but she was not alive to see it. So I do feel like if this is calling to you, to and I know it's a cliche, but the thing is with cliches, they're true. It's like, don't wait for life to come at you with the 2x4 and knock you down before you actually start to listen to that inner voice and make the changes that you need to make in order to see what you want to see. So that's part of the reason I really love to share these stories, get out there and talk about it, because I don't want people to I really don't want people to wake up one day, and they're near the end of their life, and they realize that the very things that they knew they were supposed to be here to do, they just never did.
Yeah, and I think that's great, because people have something, I don't know if you've heard of this, but it's a bucket list. So we call it over here a bucket list.
Yes.
So where you might travel to, which obviously isn't happening at the moment, but where you might travel to, you might experience in your life. And it could be that one of those things, it definitely was for me, was that at least one, if not more, books were going to be out there. And
Yes.
it might be that just listening to this, you're hearing this and thinking, oh my God, like I've been thinking about this for so long, and now I'm having to work at home, or now I'm having to go within, I'm having to stop. Then this might be a great time to actually contact Michele and say, you know, where do I start really? Huh? Yeah.
Yes, I think that's a great idea, because I really, it's really important, because the thing is if you, once you do get your book out, now you've got a vehicle where your work will live on. So whatever it is that you meant to say, it will now live on past you.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. I mean, the reason why I wrote my book is that I wanted people to hear the message they could heal themselves.
Yes.
It's called Awaken the Light Within. So basically it was about awakening the light. So I didn't think about it in any other way apart from I really wanted to reach people on that level. And I already have a bit of business. I already have, you know, my following and stuff, but I really wanted to get that extra message out there that people could heal themselves. And so often somebody's got just a message that they want to share. Bless you.
Yeah,
bless you.
Allergies.
Allergies. Oh well, right. Well, maybe we can work together. So basically, the message that you might have. So if you're listening to this and you feel that there's a message that you would really like to share, like Michele shared a part of her message this evening on this podcast. I share on episode 1, you'll hear my spiritual awakening story, which led me to do what I do. And you may have that too. So I want you just to listen to this, really feel into it. And if you feel drawn to contact Michele, you can find her on, what's the best website?
Lovebasedpublishing.com.
Yeah, lovebasedpublishing.com. But you're going to find this across all the social media as well, on my YouTube channel, which is Susan Kennard, and all my social media. So you'll be able to find this interview there too. And so if you're listening or watching this, then there's probably a bit of you that actually was really interested in maybe birthing your book. So Michele, thank you so much for being here on The Spiritual Awakener. It's been great to have you, really fun and very timely for me because of where I am with my book editing. And if you've got a spiritual awakening story and you want to share it with me and my listeners, or if you had a turning point in your life where you feel, oh my goodness, it really changed me and it made me realize that I was so much more than who I thought I was, then find me on susankennard.co.uk. So until the next episode of The Spiritual Awakener, I'll send you much love.